Over the past decade, fast fashion, which is defined as the mass production of low-cost clothes, has dramatically increased. In the article, Fast Fashion is Eating the World, provided by College Board, Rachel Monroe states that major retailers such as Zara and H&M, and even more recently, online brands such as Boohoo and Fashion Nova, have all implemented this clothing production strategy into their business model, creating high volumes of low-quality goods in order to bring inexpensive styles to the market. This has led to a worldwide shift towards increased clothing consumption. As you can see in this graph, clothing production has more than doubled in the past decade, while clothing utilization has significantly decreased. This has major environmental consequences. Both consumers and companies are becoming more aware of these consequences and are doing their best to reduce them. One way this is being done is through the implementation of a circular economy, which is an economic model that seeks to severely limit the environmental footprint of the fashion industry. This brings me to my research question. To what extent can the implementation of a circular economy model be used to mitigate the environmental impacts of the fast fashion industry? Good morning, my name is Shruti Shrikant, and my argument is that the circular economy model is a viable solution to reduce fast fashion's negative impact on the environment, as it limits waste and pollution and keeps products and materials in use for longer. Fast fashion has major environmental impacts. As you can see in this graph by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, textiles account for 35% of microplastics in water. Many clothes are produced using synthetic fibers such as nylon and polyester for their cheap qualities, but when washed, this can release thousands of microfilaments into water systems, resulting in water pollution. Additionally, fast fashion produces large amounts of textile waste. As you can see in this graph by the Environmental Protection Agency, in 2018 alone, around 17,000 tons of textile waste was produced, a majority of which ending up in landfills, causing even more pollution. The circular fashion model can be used to combat these impacts. According to Anna Brismer, circular fashion is defined as clothing that is produced with the intention to be used and circulated in society for as long as possible and eventually return safely to the biosphere. Essentially, circular fashion is used to severely limit the environmental footprint of the fashion industry. First of all, circular fashion limits waste and pollution. Currently, the textile economy runs using a linear economy, in which clothing is produced, consumers buy the clothing, and then once it's no longer needed, it is disposed off and makes its way to landfills, which results in a large accumulation of waste. However, in the circular economy runs on a zero waste model, in which both clothing and the materials used to produce clothing are constantly being reused and recycled in order to prevent much waste accumulation. Many companies are using new technologies to promote circular fashion and the reduction of waste, such as new dyeing techniques, such as waterless dyeing, in which severely limits the amount of water consumption needed, and dyeing that contains less chemicals, so as to reduce water contamination. Additionally, companies are using more sustainable materials, such as 100% natural cotton, and more creative ones such as bamboo fibers in order to promote the durability and biodegradability of clothes. Additionally, circular fashion keeps products and materials in use for longer. As you can see in this graph, one of the major reasons why clothing is disposed of is because it has been damaged. Fast fashion produces very low quality clothes, but circular fashion produces clothes with durability and longevity in mind. With this, consumers can rewear and resell clothing and make it more used in society before it is disposed of. Secondhand clothing, such as thrifting and reselling, is a major component of the circular fashion system. As you can see in this graph, both the energy demand and water use of new clothing, secondhand clothing, is much less than that of new clothing. This means that consumers can still buy new clothing and and buy new clothing trends while still in a more eco-friendly way. Many consumers have become more aware of the environmental impacts of fast fashion, and this has led to a great amount of sustainability trends. As you can see in this graphic, both Gen Z and millennials are more than 80% likely to say that sustainability is important when it comes to clothing consumption. With this in mind, companies have been facing a lot of pressure to implement new sustainable practices and adopt circular fashion so as to retain their consumer base, and they have been starting to implement circular fashion policies. However, there are limitations to this solution. For example, the fragmented nature of the fashion industry indicates that there are many steps along the supply chain that all need to be in agreement to use circular fashion, but this may not be possible because of the large amounts of areas of the supply chain. Additionally, there is an attitude behavior gap in consumers, in which consumers indicate they are willing to pay more for sustainable fashion, but do not actually follow through when it comes to clothing consumption. To combat these limitations, the government could be more involved in regulating unsustainable production methods, such as implementing taxes and policies that encourage sustainable production methods, such as circular fashion. Additionally, increased consumer awareness will give consumers a greater depth of knowledge about the negative impacts of fast fashion and promote them to adopt more sustainable fashion choices. Because of its increasing popularity, circular fashion has been implemented by multiple fast fashion companies worldwide. As you can see, H&M plans to use 100% recycled and sustainably sourced materials by 2023. Target is aiming for 100% sustainably sourced cotton by 2022. Even the EU is promoting the implementation of a circular economy model in Europe. This shows that despite its limitations, the circular fashion is still a viable option in reducing the negative impact of the fast fashion industry. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I do. First of all, thank you. Let's go. First question I have for you. How valid and reliable are the sources that you use, and then how do you know they were?
I believe that the sources I used were quite reliable, as many of my pieces of evidence came from peer-reviewed journal articles, which are created using research done by experts in the sustainability field, and the information has been certified by other experts as well. I also use many pieces of evidence from environmental agencies such as the EPA and nonprofit organizations regarding sustainability, and these are also reliable. However, some of my sources did come from fast fashion companies themselves, and this might have reduced the reliability of my sources, as fast fashion companies may want to promote their sustainability goals in order to become more appealing to consumers.
All right, and if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct on this?
If I had more time, I would have liked to see how the implementation of circular fashion could be implemented in every part of the fashion industry supply chain, because right now all I researched was the potential benefits of circular fashion, but if I had seen how it was implemented in all parts of the supply chain, I could have seen how agricultural companies would use it to promote more sustainable crop production, and I could have seen how companies would use it to implement more sustainable clothing production, and then eventually see how that would work in the consumer aspect as well.